Is that up? Okay. Well, thank you for attending, and thank you for also attending. My name is Nick Shimon. I am the Adult Services Librarian at the North Liberty Library. And this is a set of sessions that is designed to introduce people to my. I intend for this to be done about half an hour, 45 minutes over a lunch break, really, is why I'm holding it at noon. So the first thing that we have to talk about is what mindfulness is, because it's used so much in culture and it's everywhere. And everybody has their own definition of it, which is, again, one of the reasons why then there's so many other definitions out there. And what I came away with was that it's just being aware of your present moment enough that you are aware of what your thoughts and feelings are, in order to better interact with those. And the way that we go about practicing being mindful is actually through the process of meditation. And that is what meditation is basically practicing mindfulness. And so people have an interesting concept of what meditation is, in part from what has come up with TV, movies. You see somebody in a very opulent room with smoke and sitting there cross-legged. But it's really much more mundane than the present, and not having your thoughts run away from you. Most of us feel like we have control over what we think, or we understand how we're thinking, but we really don't once you get to the process of it. They're usually running forward either fast into the future, trying to figure out what may happen or what might happen with something, or we focus on things that we have done, or things that have occurred. They're running in the past or the future. So we are very rarely in the present moment. And one of the benefits of mindfulness is you actually get to experience your life as sets of moments then, and actually get to be aware of things that are around you, which you don't normally get to see. One of the ways that I view actually practicing meditation and being mindful in a particular moment is like when you're driving in fog and you're still driving and you're okay, but then you get to a clearing and all of a sudden you can see green, our green fields in North Liberty, or in Iowa, the green on the trees. It's just like, wow, I didn't see that because it was obscured by all of this fog. And so, in part, I started meditating about 12 to 13 years ago. I was actually researching or reading up on different religions, just because I wanted to know about other religions. I was raised as a Lutheran, so I was familiar with one thing, but just was interested in reading about different religions and picked up Buddhism. And funnily enough, Buddhism really isn't a religion. It is really focused on mindfulness as a whole. The Buddha himself is a historical figure named Siddhartha Gautama, who lived in modern-day Nepal area around 500 BC, and just was a teacher. That's what Buddha means, is actually teacher. And so, of course, when the Western cultures went over to China, India, they labeled Buddhism as a religion, even though it's really just a way of trying to think. And the Buddha himself would be very remiss about being considered any sort of religious figure, because he just wants you to be, he's just trying to teach people to be present in the moment, not necessarily wanting to be a religious figure. So I've used meditation for a long time, in a way to help reduce my stress and anxiety. I am somebody who focuses very heavily on the future, what I consider a worrier. The thing is that you never know what's going to happen, and you have very little control over that. And the best way of thinking about that is actually to focus on those feelings, not to eliminate your feelings and your thoughts, but to recognize when you are having them. If you're worried about something in the future, that is probably an indicator that you feel like you need more planning in some area that you haven't done. If you're worried about a specific part of something coming up, maybe you require more planning, or maybe you just need to talk to somebody and hash out your thoughts with those. It's usually a sign that you need action as opposed um, to actually, trying to worry about that. Most of the time, whatever you worry about doesn't actually come to pass, or something different happens, and you still have to improvise. Um, and so it also came into the other reason why I'm providing this as part of my work in the library is I've been a follower of what are the Blue Zones, and there was the book called The Blue Zones written in 2008 that talked about the 6 communities around the world that live the longest, and each of those communities share a point in their day in which they downshift, and this is either usually a religious community, so they pray, and I would advocate that if somebody watching here, or if you're a religious prayer, if you're focused on the topic, can be considered a form of meditation, where you are in the present, focusing on what your prayer may be. Or these communities meditate, and it's a way to sort of center themselves and bring themselves down from the stress and um, just the stress of everyday life that they feel. Um, and I'm also a very practical person. Uh, so there's been a number of studies that have come out on the benefits of mindfulness. There's a Harvard study that I'll link here, and I meant to print one out, and I'll get that copy for you when we're done. People who meditate regularly use about 40% less medical services. They experience about 30% less stress, and they sleep better. They have less pain. I personally, I wear my Garmin watch. I can tell you that when I'm actively meditating, my resting heart rate drops by about 10 beats per minute. And I do feel like I sleep better, or I fall asleep better. I'm somebody who sometimes has trouble falling asleep. So those are just data sets. I know that I feel better my body responds better when I've meditated. Um, and in terms of being present in the moment, it also has a number of positive business or other activity results. And there's in business, people will talk about getting into flow, which is a state in which you're working on something specific, and you're so heavily focused that you lose track of the time that you're working on. You're just completely focused. And I'm like, that is just being mindful. You're using mindfulness in business. Or if you watch sports or activities, you'll see somebody being referred to as being in the zone, in which they're so focused on their sport or their activity that they're not thinking about the crowd. They're not thinking about anything other than what their game is, which is, again, they're just being mindful. They're being present in that moment and focused on the mechanics of what they're doing, as opposed to all the other things that are going on around them. So how do we go about doing this? There's 2 general types of meditation. One is an unguided meditation, which is generally what's practiced in the Asian areas, Japan, China, Nepal, India, and then more common in the Western side is our more guided meditations, and that's what we're going to start with. I actually started, as I mentioned, reading about Buddhism, so I started with unguided meditation, but it is generally, I think, accepted to be more easier for people to start with the guided meditation. So that's what we're going to start with. There are a number of apps that are available on phones. There's actually many, many apps now about meditation. One of the more prolific ones is called 10% Happier. A man named his first name is Dan. He was a reporter. I'm drawing a complete blank on what his last name is right at the moment. But he was a reporter and had a nervous breakdown on air and transformed that into sort of a business surrounding meditation and mindfulness. And see here, if I was worried about it, I would have never have thought that I would have lost the man's last name. And here it is. It's just completely gone.
You're too young. I'm used to that.
But that's called 10% Happier. It does offer free meditation and learning. And then, of course, he expands. Um, what I've been using is an app called Balance. My learning, trying to learn how to do a guided meditation, is called Balance. And they're offering a free year for people currently. There's Insight Timer, which offers free meditations. And again, they expand offering with payments. There's a UCLA mindfulness app, which is completely free. Since it is free and developed by a university, it's not as flashy as some of the other apps. And then there's a couple very common paid ones called Headspace, and then there's Calm as well. Also, if you're a part of Spotify or if you're online, there's many different podcasts that offer both discussions on mindfulness as well as individual meditations themselves. So, since this is the first time, we're going to talk about how to do meditation. There's a whole lot of discussion about sitting in posture. We're not going to worry about that too much. Most of the time, I use a chair. I just sit in a chair or I lay down. If you get into longer, extended periods where you're going for a half hour plus, then there are special cushions and seats that you can buy that will give you a seated position that is supposed to be better maintained for a long period of time. Thinking, of course, that some people around the world would meditate for hours on end. And I have young children and a job, and so that does not happen in my end. And so I think I can avoid the chairs and the cushions right now. It's important to remember that this is a practice. We're always practicing. There is no such thing as somebody who's completed their practice in mindfulness and meditation, as well as there's no way for me sitting here to be able to tell you how your mind is working at any particular point. So I can help guide, but it's very hard for me to tell you exactly what to do at any particular point. If we're new to this, it'll be difficult. It is part of our way of life, as we discussed, to be constantly going. Like the American way of life is, if you're not doing something, actually, if you're not multitasking, if you're not doing multiple things, then you're not achieving what we're supposed to be doing. So the idea of shutting all of that down is definitely not something that we are comfortable doing. And in fact, I told you, I actually felt anxiety over not feeling anxiety when I first started doing this. The key is we're going to focus on something specific, and as your mind wanders, it will wander, because everybody's does. Just guide it back towards what we're focusing on. Some people will say that you want to give yourself a little nod, a little like, congratulations, you pulled yourself back. And that is what we're trying to do, is just constantly pull ourselves back. I feel it's like trying to pull somebody on a bungee cord through mud. Like, it's just like, okay, come on back. Here's my thought. I'm just going to pull you back. Keep in mind that any given day can be harder or easier. Different settings can be harder or easier. When I'm tired and stressed, when I need meditation the most, it is usually harder for me to focus. So starting out, it is easiest to be in sort of a quiet, it'll be awful. Like, I wouldn't recommend my view right now looking out into this hallway, because there will be plenty of distractions going on. And that's basically it. We'll sit in our chairs. We want to sit with our feet flat on the floor. Many people will recommend taking off our shoes. I'm going to leave mine on and just sit as straight as we can. And what we're going to be doing is what's called a body scan, which is one of the easiest ways of going about meditation. And we'll actually do a little bit of a 10-minute meditation as part of this. And if you're watching this, feel free to go along with us. We're going to just keep our hands flat or our hands settled, and we want to try and keep our back straight. One of the things I found is it's not necessarily trying to force yourself into an upright position, but you want to keep your lungs able to open. So if you're hunched over, your lungs don't expand, and you'll actually end up pushing yourself upward a little bit with your breath. So we're going to start, and I would recommend closing your eyes. It's easier to do that starting out. We're going to take some deep breaths to get us centered. So in, and again, and one more. So as we start the meditation, we're going to start by focusing on our feet and how they are interacting with the surface that they are positioned on. Notice how the surface below them feels. Maybe you're on carpet and it feels squishier. Notice if there's any stress or tension in your feet, any pains. We'll move up to our calf and our shins. Again, just noting any sensations that the bottom part of our legs are giving us. Maybe they're tight from walking, or maybe they're well stretched and they feel long. If you do feel any tightness, with every exhale, just see if they'll loosen up a little bit. Let's move up to our thighs and our hamstrings. Like with the lower leg, let's check in with them and see if there's any tightness. And if there is, with our exhales, we will ask them to relax just a little bit each time. If your hands are resting on your legs like mine are, you might look and see what each contact of your fingers feels like, as well as your hand. We'll move to our lower back and our stomachs. If we're sitting up straight, maybe our back isn't used to this sort of support. So note if you need to make any adjustments. And on the other side, notice if your stomach is expanding as we take our breaths. And if it's not, that's perfectly fine too. However your body is working is completely natural. Let's move to our upper back and chest. Our upper back and shoulders are often places where we carry a lot of stress. So know how your upper back is feeling. Again, we'll ask it to relax if needed on each exhale. We'll switch sides and take a look at how our chest feels as we breathe. How it expands and contracts with each breath. Move up to our shoulders, probably the place where we carry the most stress throughout our days. So definitely check in there and ask if they have any tension. Also moving up to our neck and asking it to relax as well with each exhale. Let's check in with our jaw, see if it's clenched, if it can relax in any way, as well as the muscles around your eyes. Lastly, we're going to focus in on the actual breath coming in, the cool air as it comes in, and the warm air as we exhale. And then we'll just take a minute to check in with our body as a whole. What do you notice about the temperature in your area? Maybe there's a breeze from a fan or a vent that you can feel on your skin. Maybe there's something unique about how the surface that you're sitting on and how that feels. Okay, then we're going to take 3, again, deep breaths. Again. And one more. And then as you're ready, open your eyes and come back to your normal thoughts. And I want you to take a second to congratulate yourself for practicing. Like anything, practice will always work to improve yourself. And it's not very often that we get a chance to actually take a moment for ourselves to try and improve ourselves. So congratulate yourself on taking part in that. One thing that some people do will keep a meditation journal, just talking about how long they meditated, what day they meditated, anything that stuck out with them. So if you're interested in doing that, that would definitely be something that you could take a look at doing. Are there any closing questions?
So when you breathe, are you supposed to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, or just breathe through your nose?
And that would depend on who you ask. I would say breathing in through your nose is important. Breathing out is up to you, whatever feels more natural. Next week, we're going to focus on doing a little bit of breath focus, doing some counting of our breaths. There's a couple of methods that different people use for relaxation and focus, so we'll look at some of those, as well as examining some of what are, as a part of looking at how we think about the world, we'll look at how our values shape how we see things in the world as well. So that's it for today.
Is there like a recommended time when you
Oh.
start?
So, in terms of recommendations for practicing, the general recommendation is really just to practice regularly. Practicing 5 minutes a day is better than practicing one day for an extended period. So it's probably easiest to start off 5-10 minutes every day, whatever you can make time for. Eventually, we'll get into talking about doing mindfulness throughout activity or part of your household, your day-to-day stuff. I know part of our thoughts in terms of disliking doing things like chores is when our mind wanders to things that we want to do somewhere else. So we'll look at being present while we're doing things and actually, in some ways, taking joy out of doing those day-to-day tasks that we usually dread doing so much.
And is there a better time of day, like morning, night?
It really depends on you. If you're a morning person, it may give you a kickstart to the day. Some people will recommend right after you get done at work or done with a task. Some people will recommend in the middle of the day when you need a little bit of a pick-me-up. If you're feeling a little groggy, that'll help you kind of focus and give you some energy for the rest of the day. I personally tend to do it right before I go to bed for no particular reason, and that's just when I have time. So it really doesn't matter. It really depends on you, your availability, and how you feel.
Okay. Good.
Okay, well, thank you, and
Yeah.
thank you out there. Hopefully we'll see you next week.
Yeah, I think I signed up.
Okay.
I clicked the button anyway. I didn't know if it was